The smile never changed, but behind it, everything was falling apart. For years, Alison Krauss looked untouchable. A voice so pure it didn't just sound good, it felt unreal. Crowds went silent the moment she sang. Stages lit up just for her. And awards? They kept coming, one after another, until she reached a number no woman in history had ever touched. 26 Grammy Awards. She had everything. Fame, respect, legacy, and then she vanished. No warning, no explanation. Just silence. Fans were confused, then worried, then desperate for answers. Where did she go? Why did she disappear at the peak of her career? And the biggest question of all, what happened to her voice? Because this wasn't just a break. This wasn't just time off. Something was wrong. Something no one saw coming. Before the silence, her life was moving at full speed. Tour after tour, city after city, crowds that never got smaller, expectations that never slowed down. From a young age, Alison Krauss wasn't just talented, she was different. While others were still learning, she was already mastering. Her fiddle spoke in ways words couldn't. Her voice carried something deeper, something rare. By the time she joined Union Station, everything changed. She wasn't just part of the band. She became the sound people remembered. Producers wanted her on their records. Artists wanted her beside them on stage. Fans wanted more. And they got it. Albums that never failed. Performances that never missed. A reputation that only grew stronger. But behind that perfection, pressure was building, and pressure doesn't ask for permission. It just shows up, slowly, quietly, and then all at once. At first, it didn't seem serious, just exhaustion. Long days turning into longer nights. Travel that never stopped. A mind that refused to rest. She told herself it was normal, part of the job, part of the success. But then something changed. Her voice felt different. Not gone, not broken, just not the same. Notes didn't land like they used to. Control started slipping. Confidence started fading. And for a singer, that's everything. Because when your voice is your identity, even the smallest change feels like a warning. But this wasn't small, it was getting worse. Doctors finally gave it a name. Dysphonia. A condition that affects how the voice works, how it sounds, how it responds. The one thing she had built her entire life on was no longer reliable. Imagine that. Spending years becoming one of the greatest voices in music, only to wake up one day and not trust it anymore. Shows became risky. Performances became uncertain. And then came the decision that changed everything. Stop. No singing, no pushing, no performing, just silence. Tours were cancelled, schedules cleared, plans disappeared, and just like that, she was gone, but the real battle hadn't even started yet, because losing the stage is one thing. Losing your voice is something else entirely. Days turned quiet. Too quiet. No rehearsals, no crowds, no applause, just thoughts. Questions that didn't have answers. Would she ever sound the same again? Would people still care? Would there even be a place for her when she came back? Because the truth is, the industry doesn't wait. New artists were rising. New sounds were taking over. The spotlight moved on, but she didn't. She stayed in that silence, fighting something no one could see. Music builds slowly. Recovery wasn't fast, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't inspiring, at least not at first. It was frustrating. Vocal exercises. That felt impossible. Days where nothing worked. Moments where even speaking felt like a risk. Progress came slowly, painfully slowly, one note at a time. And sometimes, not at all. There were days she questioned everything. Her career, her future, even herself. Because when the thing that defines you starts slipping away, you don't just lose skill. You lose certainty. Music fades. And then came the hardest part. Waiting. Waiting for improvement. Waiting for signs. Waiting for something to change. But time doesn't always bring answers. Sometimes it just brings doubt, and doubt is loud, louder than any crowd she had ever performed for. It whispered questions she couldn't ignore. What if this is it? What if it never comes back? What if the best is already behind you? Those thoughts don't just disappear. They stay, they grow, they test you. And in that silence, she had to make a choice. Walk away or fight. Music rises. She chose to fight. Not loudly. Not publicly, but quietly, every single day. She went back to basics, relearning what once came naturally, training her voice like it was brand new. No shortcuts, no guarantees, just effort and patience. The kind of patience most people don't have. Slowly, things started changing. A note held longer, a sound that felt right. A moment where the fear wasn't as strong. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And progress was enough to keep going. Time passed, and something unexpected happened. Her voice didn't come back the same. It came back different, softer in some ways, stronger in others. But more importantly, it came back with understanding. She listened differently now, sang differently, felt every word in a way she hadn't before. Because this wasn't just about singing anymore. This was about survival. Music. Soft. There was still one problem. Fear. Even as her voice returned. The doubt didn't fully leave. What if it failed again? What if she stepped on stage and everything collapsed? That fear kept her back. For a long time. But then, something shifted. Not in her voice. In her mind. One day she realized something simple. She had already lost everything once, and she survived. So what was there left to fear? That's when everything changed. She reached out to her band, to the people who had been waiting, and slowly, carefully, she stepped back in, not chasing the past, not trying to prove anything, just returning. On her own terms, rehearsals felt different, more emotional, more real. Every note mattered. Every moment meant something, because this time, she knew what it felt like to lose it all. Music builds stronger. Recording started again. Songs took shape, and for the first time in years, she wasn't chasing perfection. She was chasing truth. Music wasn't pressure anymore. It wasn't expectation. It was connection, and that changed everything. Music peak, when Alison Krauss finally returned to the spotlight. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was powerful, because behind every note was a story. Of silence, of struggle, of rebuilding something that almost disappeared forever. This wasn't the same artist people remembered. This was someone stronger. Someone who understood every second on that stage. Someone who didn't take a single note for granted. Music fades slowly. And the truth? The real reason she came back wasn't fame, wasn't pressure, wasn't even the fans. It was the music. The one thing she couldn't let go of. The one thing that stayed. Even in silence. Because when everything else fades, what's real remains. Music ends. Some battles don't happen in front of people. They happen alone, in silence, in doubt, in moments no one ever sees, and sometimes just getting through them is the greatest victory of all. So the next time you hear her voice, remember this. You're not just listening to music. You're listening to a comeback. That almost never happened. And that changes everything. The moment. She stepped back in front of a microphone. Nothing felt the same. Not the room. Not the silence. Not even the sound of her own breath. Because this time, Every note carried risk. For years, Alison Krauss had trusted her voice without thinking. It was automatic, effortless, unquestioned. Now, every sound felt like a test. Would it hold? Would it break? Would it disappear again? That fear didn't leave overnight. It stayed with her, even as she started rebuilding. Rehearsals were quiet, at first. Careful, measured, no pushing, no rushing, just small steps. Her band watched closely, not judging, not expecting, just waiting, because they knew. This wasn't just about music anymore. This was about trust, trusting the voice, trusting the process, trusting herself again. And that's not something you get back easily. There were moments she stopped mid-song, moments where the doubt came rushing back, moments where silence felt safer than trying. But she didn't quit. Not this time. Because she had already come too far to turn back. Outside that room, the world had changed. New artists dominated charts. New sounds defined the industry. Everything felt faster, louder, different. And for a moment, she questioned her place in it. Would people still listen? Would her sound still matter? Or had time quietly moved on without her? It's a question every artist fears. But few ever face this directly. Because coming back isn't just about skill. It's about timing, relevance, connection. And none of those are guaranteed. Music fades. But Alison Krauss wasn't trying to compete. She was